This is a short tutorial on how to convert between decimals, fractions, and percentages. Now, these can come up quite a lot in the functional skills tests, but are never directly asked. So, for example, you'll never get asked a question directly where they sit there and go, can you convert a decimal into a percentage? But it'll be kind of embedded into a question somewhere. So, what we're going to do in this tutorial is just have a look at how to convert between the three, and then in other tutorials we can have a look at how that can come up in exam style questions. So, to convert between the three, we have a very simple tool. We use what we call the conversion triangle. Now, obviously we start with a very basic triangle, and we write fractions at the top. We have percentage down at the bottom left. Oops. And we have decimals down at the bottom right. Now for this example we're going to start with a percentage and kind of convert that into a decimal and a fraction whilst we go. So we'll start with a fairly easy percentage. We'll start with 35%. Now, to be able to convert this into a decimal, let's go this way along the triangle. All we have to do is divide our percentage by 100. So at this point it is useful to remember that we can use calculators during these tests. So obviously don't feel like you have to try and do it in your head. You can feel free to use a calculator whenever you can. So for this one, obviously 35 divided by 100. Whoops, that's 1000. Let's try that again. That's better. You can see we end up with 0.35. If my pen will write. So you can see the similarities between the decimal and the percentage. Where the percentage is 35%, the decimal is 0 point, and then you've got the 35. Now, it'll always look like this, your decimal, so you'll always have a 0 point at the start. You might, if you're converting something, say 5%, if you're converting 5% into a decimal, and you divide it by 100, you'd end up with 0.05. So, sometimes after the point, you will still have a naught. It's nothing to get concerned about. It's as long as that number, your percentage, is below 10, you'll always have a naught after the decimal point. And that's it. That's how you can convert between a percentage and a decimal. So obviously if we're going back the opposite way, we do the exact opposite. So we multiply by 100. Now this will just put it back into a percentage for us, and it's easy enough to kind of convert between those two. Now, the one where everybody starts getting slightly more concerned is where we start going towards fractions. For some reason everyone tends to switch off the minute they hear the word fraction. It kind of reminded me of school and nothing that I enjoyed. So the main way we can get from fractions, from percentage up to fractions, is to simply write our percentage over 100. So in our case we'd have 35 over 100. And that's all we need to do. Now, there is such a thing as simplifying fractions, but we'll do another video on that. We'll leave that for now, and we'll leave our fraction as that. Now, when we go back from a fraction down to a percentage, this can cause some issues. If, for example, your fraction isn't over 100, this can cause some serious issues. So we try to avoid that one. Simply because we don't want to start causing any problems if we don't need to. So the main way we can convert back down is to go from a fraction down to a decimal. Now, all we have to do for this is to have your top number and divide that by your bottom number. So, using the numbers we've got up here, we know that'll be 35 divided by 100. And as we know from our sum at the very start, that is equal to 0.35. Now, looking at this, it can be quite confusing at first, but it is something that you get the hang of relatively quickly. So we'll just do one example question, and yeah, we'll do one example and see how we get on. So if, say, we start with 1 over 4. So we're going to start with a fraction this time rather than with a percentage. Now, if you're watching the video, feel free to stop here and try this yourself before I tell you, but we're going to go straight into it now. So, as we said, to convert from a fraction down to a decimal, it's your top divided by your bottom. So 1 divided by 4 is equal to, and remember, always allowed to use your calculator during these tests, so you never have to do these kind of sums in your head. It's equal to 0.25. Just squeeze it on the end there. Just about. So 0.25. Then if we're wanting to put that across to a percentage, we always take your decimal and then multiply it by 100. So again, come back to the calculator, multiply that, let's try that again. Which is equal to 25%. Now that's how we can convert between fractions, decimals and percentages relatively easily. And that's the end of this tutorial.